No, I'm not mad. This is an acoustic toy. It responds to sound, you see. If I'm very quiet, nothing happens. Or I can turn it onto a kind of manual control when it's on all the time. And then you can see things like, it's a bit like a plasma ball, but it's thin. Look, it's a two-dimensional plasma ball in a sense. They call it a lightning plate. And you can see my ghostly fingers, all blue in the background. If I put both hands either way, it attracts almost all the lightning to that area where my hands are. My hands are acting as an earth, of course. So it's quite similar to the plasma ball. I don't think it's quite so interesting. The plasma ball's three-dimensional, it's more fun. But it's quite fun to have something which is acoustic, which means you can have it in a party when the beat's going bum ba-dum, bum bum ba-dum, and this would respond to the sound. It makes it better fun. So there we are. Well, these items here, there's only 4 of them. They're all mains-powered ones. They all require lots and lots of spaghetti here. And they're ones that I've had sitting mostly, these 3 of them, just sit in my glory hole, my under the stairs cupboard for years and years and years. For every 10 years, perhaps I'll bring one out. That one I haven't had for 20 years out. So anyway, let's look at another one. This one here is an early version of the levitating thing. It's got a little electromagnet there. This is a ball with a magnet on the top, you can see. And if I put it in the very top, it just sits there like that. But if I bring it down into the sweet spot, there's a magic eye going across which detects it, and then lights come on. Let's look at see how it works. Oh, there it is. There we are. Oh, and it quivers there. It sort of quivers up and down, and the magic eye detecting whether it's below the sweet spot or just above it, and it'll turn on, turn off. And it's quite pretty. That it does make a little bit of a light show, but rather weak. It's unlike the modern ones which go on the ceiling, look fantastic. This one is all lights coming from underneath, hitting the silver ball and reflecting down on the table. So if you had a big white tablecloth, you'd see a lot of lights doing fun things, etc., etc., etc. See if I can get it to actually rotate quite fast. Yes, you can. What I did discover when I'm playing with it, and with these toys like this, you should play with them, is it doesn't necessarily require this thing to make it float. For instance, would you believe that a little bottle top would float? I mean, it's not even magnetic, but it's magnetizable, that's the point. The answer is it does. I discovered this completely by accident. I'll put it into the sweet spot. About there. Ooh, steady. About there. Ooh, try again. I've got it underneath, there we are. And it rotates, look at that. Gives a new meaning to the expression. Take your hats off, isn't it? I give it a few turns to make it turn round and round and round and round. So it's able to, an electromagnet here is able to induce a magnetic field and create a bit of reverse. If the north pole at the top, it'll be a south pole underneath, and keeps it up floating in the air. Fascinating. But it's not meant for that. It's meant for the ball, of course, which is perhaps more glamorous. Nice one, that. Very nice. Take that out and it goes off. The biggest one I've got here, which is a very, very old item. Let's see if you recognise it. It used to be quite popular about 50 years ago. They probably made it about 80 years ago. It's got an enormous amount. I've got to put the electrics in for this one to make it work. Probably best not to leave it on all the time. Interestingly, just to show how old it is, the electric cable for it is one of these old cloth-covered ones. I mean, it must be 50, 60, 70 years old. I don't know. It does something quite remarkable. If you have never seen it before, you're in for a treat. 240 volts are there, 2 carbon rods, mustn't touch anything because it's 240 volts and it's bare, and you'll burn your hands and electrocute yourself, so it's a bit dangerous. What you do is you wind it in to the point at which those 2 carbon rods touch, and it's not a direct short because it's got to go through the bars of a fire, and they only allow about 5 or 10 amps to go through. But nevertheless, when I wind it in so they actually touch, I don't think it's beyond long enough for you to see these, but these things here will be glowing because they're taking a current going through. Let's get it to go in a bit more. That's it, about there. And then we can start drawing it out once it's heated up, and we get an arc of fire there. It's called a carbon arc, that's the name of the thing. It was used perhaps 50, 80 years ago to create a very, very fierce light. It's only quite recently they've got up to this luminosity using, well, LEDs, particularly xenon ones, probably match this for illumination. Very, very powerful. I think probably when they were used in theatre, they'd have motorised ones, turning them in and making the carbon arcs the carbon rods come together at the rate of one millimetre every minute or something like that as they're burning up. Because at the end of about half an hour, the carbon rods themselves are completely evaporated. They're turned into gas, in fact, and then it's finished. Now, if I unwind it, that's about the widest I can get. There'll come a point in which it'll turn off, and that's because there's only 240 volts going through it. If there's 1,000 volts, you'd have a much bigger arc. Take it off, take it off, take it off, and suddenly it'll turn off. Ooh, the noise is getting good too. That's about the maximum, I think. Any second now. Silence. But it's still alive, so we can't let kids play with this, because I don't dare touch any of that. I'll burn my hands, electrocute myself at the same time. So that's an early carbon arc, which I don't think they're ever made anymore, but what with the xenon, etc., it's a far safer and better way of illumination. Well, what a lovely piece to show, a bit of history. Lovely burning smell too, which you don't get from the xenon ones. The last one is probably my favourite, and this is a tremendous executive toy. This is absolutely wonderful. It's called Stingray, invented by Paul Friedlander about the early 90s, late 80s. I met him several times, went to parties in his house in North London, and he invents the most wonderful things. This is by far his best, I think. What it's got is two motors here, which are exactly coordinated. So every half turn of one produces half a turn of the other motor. They're very well controlled, otherwise the string will wind up very quickly and become unusable. And inside is a colour wheel going horizontally, throwing colour up at the string. So let's turn it on, see what happens. If I put it right together like that, it'll form a single loop like that. Now if I try it as a single loop, if I vary the speed of the colour wheel or the speed of the other one, you should get a point at which they produce a still picture. I can't get that for a minute. Let me just show what the speeds are doing. That's the speed of the string. Oh no, that's automatic, that's what it is. That's the speed of the string, very, very slow, hardly moving at all. Now it's getting a bit faster, now a bit faster, now a bit faster, and that's the maximum speed of the string. The colour wheel, if you turn it down too far, it starts flashing really quite unpleasantly. You'll find that it gives me a headache actually. It's going quite slow even now. You're getting out of rhythm or something. But if you speed it up to a reasonable speed, then we're going to get some fun and games. So let's get the easy picture first of all to start with. Oh shit. Now if I vary this one, I should be able to get the colours are free. There we are, just about frozen. Look at that, beautiful. And then if I bring them together, you get 3, and again, this one I've got to vary the speed again to get the coloration to freeze. The colours are going all the time whirling around, but they're only rather fun to do when they're moving very slowly and your eyes can take in the colour. I think it's very pretty. That's very pretty. Lovely effect. You can vary several things. You can put these back and forward in and out of the light zone. You can tilt them as well. They're quite flexible. And you can bring them, you can slew them sideways. That's an interesting effect. You just see if I can get that to colour up. Oh, beautiful, look at that, look at that, that's very nice. Superb. And then bring them into, so they're opposite each other. I think it's, either that or the three lobe one is my favourite one. Let's try and get into three lobes. Maybe I like that. Depends on the distance between them as well. They made it appeared sometime in the 90s. Paul Friedlander was, I think, invented about 1990, and they did make after about 10 years another version, which appeared, and then I don't know, that's disappeared again. It's something so good that it ought to come back again because I think it's one of my favourite playthings. And at kids' parties, I used to find small girls with long hair who get their hair tangled in the string, and others would come and rescue them and things. But it's got some superb parameters to make the thing perform. Isn't that wonderful? So, one of my favourites, and a nice name for it too. Stingray is a play on the word for stingray, of course, a science fiction thing. So it's getting a bit slow now, so I need to speed up, otherwise I'm going to get headaches with it. Quite my favourite toy of the 4, I think. This one I've spent a long time playing with. The other ones are really quite brief, but this one is the best. What do you think?